Calculate the sum of squared deviations and the variance for the following sample of scores. So my sample is 1, 3, 0, and 0. Now it's always important that whenever you have zeros in a set of data, you include the zeros. Sometimes I have students will question me and say, do I need to bother working with the zeros, considering that they represent no value? But it is important that you include them. Let me give you a really simple example. Now, my example will be to do with the average as opposed to sum of squares of the variance. But I think this will show why you do have to include zeros. Let's say you work for one day and you make $100. So you've made $100. You could say that on average you've made $100. You've only worked once, but you could still call that an average. Now what if you were to work a second day, but that day, maybe because you get paid on commission or something like that, you make nothing. Can you still say that you make an average of 100? Not really. You've worked 2 days now, and you still made a total of 100. You haven't made anything over that 100. So if you were to work out your average, it would be 100 divided by 2, it would be 50. This 0 affects the average. And in fact, it's going to affect every other statistical calculation that we're dealing with here. So for example, if I were to work out my sum of squares and either only do the 1 and the 3 or do the 1, 3, the 0, and the 0 and include the zeros, I'm going to get different answers either way. The zeros do affect your calculation, so you do have to include them. All right, so let's get this example or this little side note out of the way, and let's go back to our original question. We're supposed to find the sum of squares and the variance for the following sample of scores. So I'm going to calculate this using my computational formula. So that is the sum of x squared minus the sum of x in brackets squared over n, little n because it's a sample. So I need to know my sum of x. So what is that? 1 plus 3 plus 0 gives me 4. And what about my x squared values? So 1 squared is 1, 3 squared is 9, 0 squared is 0, 0 squared is 0. And when I add these guys up here, I'm going to get 1 plus 9. My sum of x squared equals to 10. So I can fill in these values. And this will give me 10 minus 4 squared is 16 divided by 4. That makes this whole thing equals to 4. This will give me 6. So my sum of squares is 6, which rules out C and D. But which out of A and B will it be? Is my variance going to be 2 or 1.5? Well, we are dealing with a sample, and so the sample variance is sum of squares over n minus 1. And the sum of squares we just worked out is 6. N is 4, so n minus 1 is 3. This will give me a 2. So the correct answer is A, 2.